Hello, I'm Bretton, one of our MCAT tutors here at Inspira Advantage, where we help students get into med school and other professional programs. Today, we're going to talk about the different classes of hormones you need to know to do well on the MCAT. Specifically, we're going to look at peptide hormones, steroid hormones, and amino acid derived hormones. Let's get into it. Let's start with peptide hormones. These are made of amino acids and released from the cell via exocytosis. Peptide hormones are polar and unable to pass through the cell membrane. This means that when it interacts with another cell to send a signal, it must be interacting with the outside of the cell or have some way that the cell itself is bringing it inside. A common extracellular receptor that a peptide hormone could act on is called a GPCR, or G protein coupled receptor. You do need to know a little bit about GPCRs for the MCAT. Don't worry about learning all the different types of GPCRs, but you do want to know about the general mechanism. So we'll go into that briefly here. Let's draw out our cell and say we've got our G protein in here. You'll notice that I did draw in 7 transmembrane domains. This is a fun fact the MCAT loves to test, so this makes a great Anki card. So let's begin with the signal. So say we have our peptide hormone that binds to the outside of this GPCR. This is going to cause a GTP to be hydrolyzed into a GDP plus an inorganic phosphate. Now, a few other steps are going to happen that you don't need to know here. Ultimately, what that's going to cause is adenylyl cyclase to start making cyclic AMP from ATP. This is known as the second messenger. Cyclic AMP will then turn on protein kinase A, or pKa, and pKa will then do many different things, such as inhibit glycogen synthase, as well as promote glycogen breakdown. And this is kind of your classic GPCR. Not all of them are going to act on pKa like this, but this is the one that the MCAT is known to test. It's also worth noting that peptide hormones exert their effects for a very short amount of time. So I'm going to write down transient here. Next up, we have steroid hormones. Steroid hormones exert much longer effects in a cell. Typically, this is due to differential gene expression. Steroids are made in the gonads and adrenal cortex from cholesterol. These are nonpolar molecules, which means that they will easily pass through the cell membrane. Additionally, it means that they're not going to dissolve in water. Because of this, they require a protein to move them throughout the blood and throughout the body. Once steroid hormones get inside the cell, 2 will bind together or dimerize and activate each other. Let's draw out how the mechanism of steroid hormones looks. So we have a steroid hormone come on down, go through the cell membrane, just passes on through the cell membrane. And once 2 are in here, they're going to dimerize together. Once the steroid hormones have dimerized together, they're going to pass through another membrane inside the cell. What is this membrane? The nuclear membrane. They're going to move in. And why are they doing this? Well, because they are now activating as a transcription factor. The hormone dimer will then bind to a hormone response element and cause differential gene expression. This results in a change in DNA transcription, ultimately leading to a change in protein translation. The final type of hormone we're going to talk about are amino acid derivative hormones. These hormones act similar to both peptide and steroid hormones. Some bind extracellularly, and others bind intracellularly. What amino acid derivative hormones are can be found in the name itself. They are derived from amino acids. The most common type to be tested on the MCAT are called catecholamines. These are derived from phenylalanine and tyrosine. They exert different lengths of effects depending on where they bind. Catecholamines, for example, bind to extracellular GPCRs and exert relatively transient effects. The final thing to chat about is the difference between direct and tropic hormones. Direct hormones act directly on the target tissue/organ, such as insulin, and tropic hormones require an intermediary and only affect other endocrine tissues. For example, GnRH and LH are both tropic hormones. Now you know everything you need to about hormone classification to do well on the MCAT. Thank you so much for watching our video on these hormones, and I will see you next time.